The night was colder than death. Snow fell from the black sky, covering the broken land in silence. The wind screamed across the empty valley, sharp as knives. In the middle of that endless white, a young alien mother stumbled forward. Her arms held something tighter than her own life. Her tiny child. The child was weak, his breath short and thin. His small body shook against her chest, wrapped inside the last piece of cloth she owned. She pressed him close, trying to share what little warmth her body still carried. But her arms trembled, not only from fear but from the cold that bit through her bones. She had been walking for hours, maybe days. Time meant nothing now. Her people had cast her out. They had said she was useless, too weak to work, too weak to fight. And now, with a hungry child in her arms, she had no place to go. Every step forward was heavy. Every breath felt like the last. Her bare feet left red marks in the snow. She did not cry. There were no tears left to cry. Instead, she whispered broken lullabies into her child's ear, hoping her voice could keep him alive a little longer. "Just sleep, little one," she murmured. "Mama is here, don't be afraid." But the truth was cruel. The child's eyes were half closed. His lips were pale. His small hands no longer moved. She felt his weakness as if it was her own. The snowstorm grew stronger. The world around them vanished in white mist. She could not see where the land ended or where the sky began. It was as if she and her child were alone in the universe. Her legs finally gave up. She fell to her knees, the child still clutched to her chest. The snow welcomed them like a grave. She knew this was the end. Memories flooded her mind. The day her people pushed her away. The faces of those who turned cold when she begged for food. The endless nights she tried to keep her baby alive with. Nothing but love. Love, she thought, was strong, but not strong enough to fight death. Her lips touched her child's forehead, icy against icy. She wrapped herself around him tighter, like a shield. If they had to die, then they would die together. She closed her eyes. Darkness. At first she thought it was death, but then something different. Warmth. It spread slowly at first, strange and unfamiliar, crawling over her frozen skin. Her ears caught a sound, the crackling of fire. She forced her eyes open, confused. The storm was gone, or maybe she was no longer outside. Her child was still in her arms, but now he was breathing, weak yet steady. And across from her there was a figure, a man, not of her people, not of any kind she had ever seen closely before. His form was strong, broad, wrapped in thick clothes. His face was lined with scars, but his eyes burned with something she did not understand. Kindness. The man crouched near a fire he had built, feeding it with pieces of wood. Orange light danced across his face, chasing away the shadows. He turned, his head toward her, and she flinched. A human. She had heard of them in stories, dangerous, fierce creatures from faraway worlds. Her people had always spoken of humans with fear, calling them war-born, merciless. Yet this man had lifted her from the snow. This man had saved her child from death. Her lips moved, but no words came out. Her throat was too dry, too broken. The human did not speak either, at least not in her language. He only pushed a small piece of food toward her, something warm, something that smelled of life. Her eyes locked on it, then on him. She hesitated. Fear and hunger battled inside her. What if it was a trick? What if he was only keeping her alive for something worse? But then the child stirred in her arms. He made a faint sound, half cry, half breath. His tiny mouth opened, searching. The mother's heart broke. She had nothing left to give her child. Only this stranger could help. Her shaking hand reached forward slowly, carefully. She took the food, broke a piece, and pressed it to her child's lips. The boy swallowed weakly, then again. A color, faint but real, returned to his cheeks. The mother gasped. Tears finally came. hot tears that burned her frozen skin. She looked at the human again, this strange man of scars and firelight. He said nothing, only gave a small nod as if to tell her, "Eat. Live." For the first time in many nights, she felt something she thought was gone forever. Hope. But hope was dangerous too. She knew nothing of him. She did not know why he had saved her or what he wanted. All she knew was this: she and her child were still alive, and it was because of the human. The fire glowed bright against the darkness, and its warmth spread through the small cave. The alien mother sat close, holding her child as if he could disappear at any moment. She still could not believe he was breathing again. His chest rose and fell slowly, but at least it was moving. That was life. That was everything. Her eyes lifted toward the stranger. The human sat across from her, silent. His hands worked with skill, breaking small branches and feeding them into the flames. Sparks rose, lighting his scarred face for only a second before fading into the smoke. He was not like the stories her people had told. Humans were supposed to be beasts, killers, creatures with no mercy. But this man, he had given warmth instead, of steel food instead of pain. Still fear coiled inside her. Why had he saved her? What did he want? The man's eyes shifted toward her. They were sharp, but not cruel. He pointed toward the fire, then toward her and the child. She understood. Stay warm. She pulled the blanket closer, wrapping it around. Her son. His skin was no longer ice, but she feared the cold would steal him again if she let her guard down. The man stood and moved to the edge of the cave. Snow still fell outside, soft but endless. He bent, picked up more wood stacked near the entrance, and carried it inside. His steps were heavy but careful, never rushing, never loud. The mother watched him like a hawk. Every movement was strange. Every breath reminded her that this was not one of her kind. His strength was obvious, but he carried it quietly, like a soldier used to walking alone. Her throat was dry. She wanted to speak, to ask who he was, but the words would not come. Would he even understand? She had heard humans spoke a tongue different from hers. Perhaps silence was safer. The child stirred, a faint sound escaping his lips. He opened his eyes for a moment, just a flicker, before closing them again. She pressed a kiss to his forehead. The human noticed. He crouched, reached into a small bag by his side, and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. He placed it on a flat stone near the fire. When he opened it, a smell filled the air, strong, rich, almost painful for her empty stomach. Meat. Cooked. Her heart raced. She had not tasted real food in days, maybe longer. Her lips trembled. The human looked at her, then slowly pushed the stone closer to her side. She froze. Was this kindness? Or a test? Her people had always said, never trust a human. Their hands. Give food today and chains tomorrow. But her child needed strength. Without food, he would not live until morning. Her hands shook as she reached out. She tore a small piece, chewed it slowly, then pressed another piece to her child's lips. The boy swallowed, weak but eager. A small sound escaped him, a sound that made her chest ache. It was almost a laugh. Tears filled her eyes again. She lifted her gaze toward the man. Why? She whispered, though she knew he would not understand. But maybe he did. His face softened. He gave a small nod, then leaned back against the cave wall. For the first time he spoke. His voice was deep, steady, strange to her ears. The words meant nothing, but the tone was clear, calm, gentle, without threat. The mother held her child tighter. She should have felt more fear. But instead, something else grew inside her. A dangerous thing. Trust. Hours passed. The fire burned, steady. The man closed his eyes but never fully slept, always waking at the faintest sound of wind or snow shifting. He was a protector, even for strangers. The mother did not close her eyes. She could not. Instead, she studied him. The scars on his hands, the tired lines on his face, the way his shoulders carried weight like an invisible burden. This man was not just a fighter, he was broken too. She thought of her people, how they had abandoned her because she was weak, how they had never cared if she and her child lived or died. And yet this stranger, this human, had carried her from the snow without asking for anything in return. The child shifted again, making a soft sound in his sleep. The man opened his eyes, looked at them, and gave the faintest smile. Not wide, not bright, but real. The fire cracked between them, throwing sparks into the air. Two broken souls, two different worlds, sitting in silence. The mother lowered her head, whispering to her child, "He saved us. Remember that." Her words were soft, almost lost in the flames, but the man's eyes flicked toward her as if he had heard. And for the first time since her exile, the alien mother felt something she thought was gone forever. Safety. The storm outside raged for 2 days. The wind howled like a beast, throwing snow against the cave mouth. Inside, the fire burned low but steady, its light painting the walls with shadows. The alien mother stayed close to the flames, her child pressed against her chest. The human sat across from her, sharpening a piece of metal against stone. His movements were slow, steady, practiced. He looked like a man who had done this 1,000 times before. The mother's eyes followed him. Each spark of metal reminded her who he was, a stranger, a human, a being her people feared. And yet, without him, she and her child would be nothing but frozen corpses buried under the snow. Her heart twisted with confusion. Gratitude battled. Fear. She wanted to thank him, but her words felt too small, too weak. She wanted to ask why he had saved her, but her voice stayed locked inside. Finally, she whispered, more to herself than to him, "I owe you my life." The human lifted his head. His eyes met hers. He did not understand the words, but perhaps he understood the tone. He gave a small shake of his head, as if to say, "You owe me nothing." The mother felt her throat tighten. She touched her child's thin hair. "But I do," she murmured. "Without you, he would be gone. And without him, I would have no reason to breathe." The child stirred, opening his eyes. For the first time, he looked at the man across the fire. His tiny hand stretched forward, reaching. The human paused, surprise flashing in his eyes. Then, slowly, he extended his scarred hand. The child's fingers wrapped weakly around his. The mother's breath caught. It was as if her son had chosen for her, chosen to trust when she could not. The human's face softened. He squeezed the child's hand gently, then released it. No words were spoken, but something unspoken passed between them. A bond, fragile, yet real. The mother lowered her gaze, shame creeping inside her. Her own people had thrown her away. They had called her weak, worthless. Yet here was a human, a stranger from another world, giving her child the care her own people had denied. She whispered again, louder this time. "Why? Why would you help me?" The human looked at her for a long moment. Then he pointed toward the child. His hand pressed against his own chest, then toward hers. His voice rumbled softly. The words were foreign, but she felt their meaning. "Because he is a child. Because you are a mother." Her eyes burned with tears she did not want to show. She bowed her head, clutching her son tighter. She thought of the life she once had, of the village that turned their backs, of the cold stares, of the endless hunger. All of them had chosen to abandon her, and yet this one man, this human, had chosen differently. The fire popped, scattering sparks. She looked at him again, truly looked. His scars told stories of battles. His clothes were patched, his hands, rough from survival. He carried his own pain, she realized. He was not a man untouched by hardship. Perhaps that was why he had saved her, because he understood what it meant to lose. The night grew deeper. The storm outside screamed like voices of the dead. The mother hummed a soft song, a lullaby from her people. Her voice cracked, but the child relaxed, drifting into sleep. The human listened quietly. His eyes closed for a moment, and she thought she saw something. Peace. She realized then. She was no longer afraid of him. The child's small hand slipped from hers in sleep, but it still rested near the human side of the fire, and in her heart, the mother understood the truth. She owed this man a debt she could never repay, not just for saving her life, not just for saving her child, but for giving her something she had thought was lost forever. Hope. The human opened, his eyes again catching her gaze. He gave a slight nod, the kind that carried no pride, only acceptance, as if to tell her, live. That is enough. The mother swallowed hard. For the first time since her exile, she spoke words with strength. I will repay you, she said, her voice shaking but certain. The human tilted his head, not understanding her language but sensing her determination. He did not argue. He simply added another log to the fire and sat in silence. The mother leaned back, her child safe in her arms, and let her eyes close. Sleep came slowly, but it came, and in her dreams, for the first time, she did not see only cold and death. She saw fire. She saw life. She saw a future, one that began with a human's kindness. The storm finally broke. The third morning came, with a pale sun hidden behind thick clouds. Snow lay heavy across the valley, untouched and silent. The cave where the mother and her child rested seemed calm. But danger never stayed far in a world like this. The human stepped outside, his boots sinking into the deep snow. He carried a spear he had made from sharpened metal and wood. His eyes scanned the white horizon with the sharpness of a hunter. He knew what silence meant in such lands. Something watched, something waited. The alien mother sat at the cave mouth, her child wrapped in the blanket against her chest. She watched the man's every movement. Fear pressed against her heart. What if he left and did not return? What if the storm had only hidden worse threats? Her thoughts were answered with a sound, a low growl. It rolled across the snow like thunder. The human froze, turning his head slowly. Between the trees, dark shapes moved. Not one. Several. Their bodies were thick with fur, their eyes glowing yellow in the dim light. Snow beasts, predators of the frozen plains. The mother gasped, clutching her child. The creatures stepped forward, their teeth bared, their breath steaming in the cold. The human shifted his spear in his hands. He looked back at the mother, his expression calm but sharp. He did not speak her language, but she understood his message. Stay inside, protect the child. Her heart hammered as she pulled back into the cave. The fire behind her seemed too small, too weak. She wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. Only snow, only death. The beasts circled, their paws silent on the snow. The human lowered himself slightly, spear pointed forward. His body moved with the rhythm of someone who had fought before. The first beast leapt. The man sidestepped, driving, his spear upward. The point tore through fur and flesh, and the beast crashed into the snow with a scream. Blood stained the white ground, but the others did not retreat. They growled louder, enraged. Two more charged. The mother cried out, pressing her child's face into her chest so he would not see. The sound of claws scraping, the clash of spear against bone, the roar of beasts. It echoed like war. The human fought with everything he had. His spear broke one beast's jaw, then stabbed another's chest. But one creature was faster. It lunged from the side, teeth sinking into his arm. He shouted, pain flashing across his scarred face. With his free hand, he drew a knife from his belt and drove it deep into the beast's neck. The creature fell limp, sliding down into the snow. Blood dripped from the man's arm. His breath came heavy, white clouds in the cold air. Still, he did not fall. He turned, ready for the last beast, the largest of them all. Its eyes glowed brighter, its growl shaking the trees. It circled, smart, waiting for the man's weakness. The mother could not stay silent. "No," she whispered, her voice trembling. She wanted to rush forward, but her child bound her in place. Fear consumed her, yet something inside screamed, louder. She could not lose him. Not the man who had saved them both. The beast lunged, massive and fast. The human braced his spear. The impact shook the ground, both man and monster falling into the snow. Teeth snapped, claws tore. The spear cracked in half. The mother screamed. The man rolled, blood staining the snow. He pushed against the beast's throat, holding back the crushing jaws with raw strength. His knife slipped from his grasp, vanishing into the snow. The beast forced closer, inch by inch. The man's arms shook, his breath ragged. The mother's body moved before her mind did. She grabbed a burning stick from the fire and ran forward. Her child cried behind her, but she did not stop. "Leave him," she shouted in her own tongue, her voice breaking with fear and courage. The beast turned its head for only a moment. That moment was enough. The human twisted, his hand reaching through the snow until his fingers closed around the knife again. With one last burst of strength, he drove the blade deep under the beast's jaw. The monster let out a choking roar before collapsing. The ground fell silent again, only the sound of the man's heavy breathing filling the air. The mother dropped, the burning stick rushing to his side. His arm bled badly, his face pale. She pressed her hands against the wound, desperate, her tears falling hot against the freezing air. "You saved us again," she whispered, voice shaking. "But now it is my turn." The human's eyes half closed, exhaustion pulling at him, yet his gaze met hers. There was no fear in his eyes, no regret. Only the calm of a man who had chosen to protect. The mother looked back at her child, who cried softly near the fire. Then she looked at the wounded man beside her. Her heart decided. She would not let him die, not after everything. The snow had taken too much from her already. It would not take him too. The cave smelled of smoke, blood, and fear. The fire still burned, but its warmth felt small compared to the cold that pressed from every side. The mother knelt beside the human, her hands red as she tried to stop his bleeding. His arm was torn, where the beast's teeth had sunk deep. His face was pale, his breath heavy. He looked at her but did not speak. His strength was fading, and she knew if nothing was done, he would not last the night. Her child whimpered from the back of the cave, sensing danger even without words. The boy's eyes shone with fear, and he clung to the blanket as if it could protect him. The mother's heart raced. She was trapped between two worlds, the world of fear and weakness that had cast her out, and the new world where this scarred stranger had saved her again and again. She could not let him die. Not now. Her hands shook as she pressed cloth to his wound. Blood still pushed through, warm against her skin. "Stay alive," she whispered in her tongue. "You gave us life. Now I will give it back." The human closed his eyes, but a faint sound came from his throat. It was not her language, but she understood the meaning. He was telling her not to waste herself for him, but she ignored it. She remembered the moment when he carried her from the snow, the food he gave her child, the fire he built. She remembered the way he fought, not for himself, but for them. He had risked everything when he had no reason to, and now, for the first time in her life, she had a reason to risk everything too. The mother stood and rushed to the cave entrance. Snow still covered the land, broken by the dark stains of beast, blood. She dropped to her knees and tore strips of fur from the dead creatures, her hands moving quickly despite the cold. With sharp stones she cut what she could, making rough bandages. Her people had never trusted her with healing. They had called her weak, useless, someone who could not fight or work. But tonight, she refused to believe their lies. Tonight, she would save a life. Back inside, she pressed the beast's fur against his wound, tying it tight with strips of cloth. The human groaned but did not push her away. His eyes opened slightly, meeting hers. She forced her voice steady. "You will live, do you hear me?" He did not understand the words, but her tone carried the meaning. His lips curved, just barely, into the faintest smile. The mother's chest tightened. She had been powerless so many times before. But now she felt strength she never knew she had. She pressed harder, refusing to let the bleeding win. Hours passed like this. Fire burning low, her child asleep at last, and her hands never leaving the man's side. When the bleeding slowed, she let out a shaky breath. Exhaustion washed over her, but she did not stop. She used melted snow to clean his wound, whispering soft words as if her voice could heal what her hands could not. At last, she leaned back, her body trembling. The human was alive, though weak. His eyes stayed closed, but his chest rose and fell with steady rhythm. Relief struck her so hard she almost collapsed. She pulled her child close and held him beside the man. For the first time, she let the three of them rest together, like a family bound by fire and survival. But her mind did not rest. She thought of choices. If she had walked away that first night, she and her child would already be dead. If the human had ignored her, they would never have seen another sunrise. Now, another choice lay before her: stay or leave. Leaving meant safety from the unknown. Humans were dangerous, her people's stories had always said so. But leaving also meant walking back into a world that hated her, a world that had no place for her or her son. Staying meant danger too. But it also meant hope. This man was not like the stories. His hands were scarred from battles, yet those same hands had carried her child. His eyes were tired, yet they had softened when they looked at her. The mother looked down at him as he slept, his breathing ragged but alive. Her choice was clear now. She would not leave him. For the first time since her exile, she had something worth protecting. Not just her child, but the man who had proven that kindness could still exist in a cruel world. Her hand brushed against his, gently, carefully. "We are together now," she whispered. "I will not abandon you." The fire cracked, sparks flying into the air. Outside, the night grew quiet again. But inside the cave, something stronger than fire burned. A decision, a bond, a promise. The mother had made her choice, and that choice was to stay. Days passed inside the cave. The storm outside slowly weakened, but the land was still covered in white. The human's wound healed slowly under the mother's care. Every day she cleaned the cut, changed the fur bandages, and fed him bits of broth she made from melted snow and beast meat. The human never complained. He only watched her quietly, as if surprised by her strength. Her child stayed close to him as if he were more than just a stranger. Sometimes, the boy would crawl across the blankets and reach for the man's scarred hand. The human would let the child hold his fingers even when pain made him wince. It felt strange to the mother, strange but comforting. She had never trusted anyone before. She had never allowed her child near another being. But now, she found herself watching them, with soft eyes. The boy's laughter returned in small bursts, and she realized it was because of the human. The bond between them was silent but strong. One evening, as the firelight flickered, the human tried something new. He pointed at himself and spoke a word slow and clear. "Eli." The mother frowned. She did not understand. He repeated, tapping his chest again. "Eli." Then he pointed at her. His eyes waited. Her lips parted. Was he asking her name? Slowly, carefully, she whispered, "Nira." He nodded. Nira. The sound of her name, spoken in his rough human voice, made her heart skip. It was the first time anyone had said her name with kindness in years. Then she pointed at the child. "Leo." The man smiled, repeating softly, "Leo." For the first time, they were no longer nameless strangers. They were Eli, Nira, and Leo, three souls brought together by snow and survival. The days grew longer. Nira taught Eli small words from her language. She pointed at fire and said the word. He tried to copy it, clumsy but eager. Sometimes she laughed, and he gave her a rare smile in return. Other times he taught her words from his own tongue. She repeated them carefully, her voice strange to her own ears. But every success made Eli nod in approval. It was a strange exchange. Language built not from books or teachers but from survival, from need, from trust. Nira found herself studying him more each day. His scars told of battles long past. His eyes carried sorrow but also strength. He never spoke much, but his silence was not heavy. It was steady, safe. She had lived her whole life with voices filled with judgment. But his silence was the first she did not fear. One night, as the fire burned low, Eli handed her the knife. His hand trembled from weakness, but his eyes were firm. She looked at him in confusion. "Why give this to me?" He pressed the knife into her palm and closed her fingers around it. His voice rumbled low. "Protect." The word struck her. Protect. No one had ever asked her to protect before. She had always been the one hidden away, the one told to stay out of sight, the one labeled as weak. But now, this man, this human, was telling her she was strong enough. Tears filled her eyes as she clutched the blade. "I will," she whispered, even if he did not understand. The next morning, Nira tried to repay him in her own way. She showed him how to use beast fur not just for bandages but for clothing. She sewed rough pieces together with sharpened bone, creating a thick covering that kept out the wind. When she placed it on his shoulders, Eli looked at her in surprise. Her cheeks burned under his gaze, but she said softly, "Warm." He gave a small smile and touched the fur. "Warm," he repeated. The cave no longer felt like a prison. It felt like a home. At night, when the child slept, Nira and Eli would sit quietly by the fire. She would hum old songs, and sometimes Eli would close his eyes as if the sound gave him peace. Other times he would draw strange shapes in the dirt, symbols from his world. She did not know what they meant, but she liked watching his hands move. Their worlds were different. Their languages were broken, but slowly, without realizing, they were building something greater than both. Understanding. One evening, as snow drifted softly outside, Nira felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the fire. It came from Eli's steady presence, from the way he watched her child with gentle eyes, from the way he said her name. She realized then she was no longer alone. The bond was real, growing stronger with each passing day. And though the world outside was cruel, inside the cave they had created something rare, something worth protecting with their lives. The sun rose slowly over the frozen land, its light breaking through the gray clouds. For the first time in many days, the valley glowed with a soft golden hue. The endless storm had passed. Silence filled the world, broken only by the sound of snow falling from the trees. Inside the cave, the fire had burned down to embers. Nira stirred awake, her child still warm in her arms. For a moment, fear gripped her heart, fear that Eli, the human, might not have survived the night. But when she turned her head, relief washed over her. He was alive. His breathing was slow but steady. The wound on his arm had closed more each day, the red now fading to dark scars. His strength was returning. Her child, Leo, crawled across the blankets and pressed his tiny hand against Eli's chest. The man opened his eyes and a faint smile crossed his lips. "Alive," Nira whispered softly. Eli did not know her words, but he understood her tone. He nodded once, his eyes heavy but calm. The mother felt her heart swell. How strange it was, she thought, that this scarred human, someone she had feared at first, was now the one she trusted most. Without him, her child would have died. Without him, she too would have been buried beneath the snow. Now, because of him, they had a future. As the day grew brighter, Eli slowly pushed himself to sit up. His movements were stiff, but determination burned in his eyes. He reached for his pack, pulling out tools, rope, and scraps of metal. Nira watched, confused. "What are you doing?" He glanced at her, then pointed outside. His hand drew the shape of a mountain against the air, then tapped his chest. He was saying he planned to move, to lead them away from this cave. The thought filled her with fear. The cave had been their shelter, their protection. But Eli's eyes told her the truth. Staying here meant slow death. They needed food. New, ground, and a place safer than this frozen tomb. Nira hesitated, then nodded. Together. He did not understand her word, but he smiled faintly, as if he knew. The rest of the day, they prepared. Nira used beast fur to sew stronger wraps for her child. Eli shaped wood into a sled, binding it with rope and bone. They worked side by side, two beings from different worlds, their hands moving in silent rhythm. By the time the sky turned orange, the sled was ready. Nira placed Leo on it, wrapping him in layers of fur. The child giggled, his fear forgotten in the joy of sliding across the snow. For a moment, even Eli chuckled at the sight, his voice low and rough but warm. That night, the three of them sat by the fire one last time in the cave. Nira hummed her lullaby, her voice soft. Eli listened, his eyes distant as if remembering something from long ago. When the song ended, Eli pointed at the stars outside. His voice murmured a word, something she could not understand, but his tone was full of longing. She realized then that he too had lost something, maybe a family, maybe a home. They were not so different after all. The next morning, the dawn came clear and bright. They stepped out of the cave together, leaving behind the ashes of the old fire. The snow sparkled under the sunlight, blinding but beautiful. Eli pulled the sled with strong arms, his wound no longer slowing him. Nira walked beside him, her child bundled safely. Their footprints marked a trail across the untouched snow, three paths moving forward as one. As they walked, Nira looked at the horizon. It was still dangerous, still uncertain, but for the first time in her life, she did not feel afraid. She had her child. She had Eli. She had hope. She whispered softly, "We were ready to die, but you gave us life." Eli turned his head. He could not understand her words, but he saw the truth in her eyes. He gave a small nod, his lips curving in that quiet smile she had come to know. The sun rose higher, chasing away the shadows. Together they walked into the unknown, no longer strangers, but a family. And in the frozen world, their footprints told a story of survival, trust, and a bond stronger than any storm.